My name is Matt, and I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about the PM Learning Series, a new series of videos we're offering for Google Analytics 4. Today's talk is going to be led by three Google Analytics product managers. You'll hear from me, as well as from my colleagues Breen and Anjali. Today's session is part of a larger series of training sessions led by the Google Analytics Product Manager team. As product managers, we work directly with engineers to build and maintain the Google Analytics product. So this is your chance to hear about Google Analytics directly from the source. Our goal is to help you get started using Google Analytics 4 for your web and app measurement needs. We'll walk you through everything, starting from basic Google Analytics 4 property setup, all the way up through some of the detailed ways that you can use Google Analytics 4 to achieve your business objectives. We're going to describe various components of the product, and each session is going to be led by the relevant product manager that helped design that component or feature. We'll discuss both theoretical and practical examples, and we'll walk through live demos of Google Analytics 4 so that you can understand deeply how Google Analytics works. Before we jump in, there are two more things I'd like to note. First, if you've never used Google Analytics 4 before, search for the Google Analytics 4 demo property. You'll be directed to a sample property that we've made accessible to everybody, showing data from the Google Merchandise Store. This is a real website and a real property made to measure it that you can take a look at. This will help you get acquainted with Google Analytics 4 and how it should look and work once it's set up properly. Second, if you have any questions at any time, go take a look at our Help Center. We have a lot of rich information there covering every feature in Google Analytics. And if you're a Google Analytics 360 customer, you'll have a dedicated point of contact that you can reach out to anytime with questions. Today's session is going to be broken into three parts. In the first section, I'll describe traffic source classification as a general introduction into how Google Analytics 4 properties classify web and app traffic. I'll cover a special set of dimensions that Google Analytics uses to define web and app traffic, and we'll discuss a number of improvements that we've made to traffic source classification in Google Analytics 4 properties. In the second section, Breen will discuss channel groups in Google Analytics 4 and the ways in which these channel groups can be used to better understand your traffic source classification data. Breen will also discuss two Google Analytics 4 features, Google Signals and User ID. In this section, we'll help you understand what these features are, how they can be used in Google Analytics 4, and how you can enable each of them to enhance Google Analytics 4's measurement capabilities. Finally, in the third section, Anjali will talk to you about attribution. In this section, we'll discuss the ways that Google Analytics uses attribution to help you understand the paths that your users are taking to conversion. Before beginning, I'll also note that each section we discuss today is intended to build on the last. First, we'll learn about the ways that Google Analytics classifies each piece of traffic that's directed to your website or app. Then, we'll learn how Google Analytics groups all of this traffic into marketer-friendly channels. And finally, we'll learn how Google Analytics attributes conversion credit to these specific traffic sources and channels. Let's jump into the first section on traffic source classification. Traffic source classification refers to a set of Google Analytics functionality that's designed to help you understand where your website or app users are coming from. To help you analyze and understand your traffic more deeply, Google Analytics provides a special set of dimensions called traffic source dimensions. Traffic source dimensions are a special set of dimensions that let you dig into user acquisition, user behavior, and attributed performance across the Google Analytics product. These dimensions are platform agnostic. In other words, they apply consistently and universally across all traffic. Traffic source dimensions operate across organic and paid traffic sources, Google paid sources and third-party paid sources, all possible buying platforms including Google Ads, Display and Video 360, and Search Ads 360, all various publishers or inventory sources including, for example, Google Search, YouTube, Bing Search, thenewyorktimes.com, and so on, and all marketing channels, for example, paid and organic search, email marketing, paid and organic social, app install campaigns, and much more. Many standard reports throughout Google Analytics 4 allow users to select traffic source dimensions as primary dimensions. On this slide, you're viewing the traffic acquisition report. This special set of traffic source dimensions currently includes 7 dimensions, which I'll cover here. If you've used Universal Analytics in the past, many of these dimensions should look very familiar. However, even to these familiar dimensions, we've made a number of improvements over Universal Analytics, which I want to call out. In examining traffic source dimensions in Universal Analytics, we noticed a number of gaps. In general, We found that in universal analytics, these dimensions were not clearly defined, often conceptually inconsistent, often hard-coded with inaccurate values or calculated based on overly simplistic rules, and that these dimensions were generally unreflective of the complex state of digital media in 2022. In Google Analytics 4, we intend to standardize and elevate these traffic source dimensions to ensure consistency and compatibility across the Google Analytics product, and to provide Google Analytics users with a toolset to perform user journey analysis. In some cases, these user journey analyses required universal analytics users to jump through hoops with custom configurations and tagging. In many cases, this level of analysis has never before been possible. I'll take a few minutes to outline several key improvements here. For a fully detailed overview of all the improvements that we've made to Google Analytics 4, you can go visit our Help Center. First, we've updated the source dimension to reflect the specific publisher or inventory source from which traffic originated. Second, we've updated the medium dimension to reflect the specific traffic acquisition method. For example, medium may represent CPM for impression-based display campaigns, CPC for click-based paid search campaigns, or email newsletter for traffic derived from clicks to your monthly marketing email to email list subscribers. Third, we've added a new source platform dimension. The source platform will be used to represent the specific platform where you're managing media buying or which allows you to manage unpaid or organic traffic. Over time, we'll apply the same principles to add additional traffic source dimensions, which reflect various concepts that are important to Google Analytics users and which apply universally across all traffic. Finally, I'll discuss a number of improvements that we've made to the default channel group dimension in Google Analytics 4. First, we've added built-in support for 8 additional channels, including organic and paid shopping, organic and paid video, audio, SMS, and mobile push notifications. Second, we've improved the channel classification for YouTube traffic. You should now find that YouTube traffic is correctly categorized via either organic or paid video channel. Third, we made a number of other improvements to improve overall channel grouping accuracy, including better classification of manually tagged social traffic, better support for matching rules, and much more. Before handing it over to my colleague Breen, there's one more important distinction to cover relating to traffic source dimensions. Specifically, the difference between what we call cross-channel traffic source dimensions and what we call integration-specific traffic source dimensions. Cross-channel traffic source dimensions, such as the ones that we're seeing here from the traffic acquisition report, should be used when you want to see a single unified picture that spans across all traffic sources and all marketing channels. These cross-channel dimensions can be identified as the names of these dimensions don't reference any specific integration, channel, or source platform. The session source, session medium, and session campaign dimensions are examples of session-scoped cross-channel traffic source dimensions. Across all Google Analytics 4 features, these cross-channel dimensions are compatible with other cross-channel traffic source dimensions. Integration-specific traffic source dimensions, like the ones that we're seeing here from the Search Ads 360 traffic report, allow you to dig more deeply into traffic that comes from one specific integration, channel, or source platform. The names of these dimensions include a specific prefix, which indicates the integration for which they're relevant. The Session SA360 source, Session SA360 medium, and Session SA360 campaign dimensions are examples of session-scoped Search Ads 360 specific dimensions. Across all Google Analytics 4 features, these integration-specific traffic source dimensions with a given prefix are compatible with the other dimensions that have the same prefix. In viewing the session-scoped Search Ads 360 specific traffic source dimensions available in this Search Ads 360 traffic report, you might notice the presence of additional concepts like SA360 engine account name or SA360 ad group name. These concepts are only conceptually relevant to the traffic that comes from SA360. When you want to analyze behavior or performance for a single integration or channel at a more granular level, you should use the set of traffic source dimensions specific to that integration. In the future, we'll continue adding additional sets of integration-specific traffic source dimensions to enable more granular analysis of different integration traffic sources. And with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague Breen to build upon what we've learned about traffic source classification and to understand how we use traffic source classification in Google Analytics 4 to define channel groups.
Thanks, Matt, for talking about traffic sources. That's super useful for my next section, as all that information flows into channel groups and how we use this data in reporting. Before I get started, though, I'd like to talk about a few definitions just to make clear. The first is traffic sources. Matt just went over this, so I'm not going to get into this in great detail, but these are the highly granular sources, traffic, campaign, source, and medium, etc., that define the specific experience that one of our end users clicked through onto one of our properties. The second is channels. Channels are logically grouped traffic sources. An example could be social or search. These enable us to group efforts that one of our marketing teams might be focused on. And then lastly, we would have a channel group. A channel group is a grouping of channels. So it would be a grouping that would contain both social and search, as an example. I'm going to use a channel group so that I can see all of my channels side by side and be able to compare them. So to start, traffic source data can be overwhelming. Here's a sample report, and you can imagine in a report like this, there's actually going to be hundreds or maybe even thousands of rows. Combinatorially across campaigns, sources, and mediums, it's a lot to take in. So channel groups and channels are going to help us understand and summarize this information. Here's a sample channel group report. You can see it's much easier to understand. And the number of channels is usually going to be something like this 10 to 15, 10 to 20. So it's a much more digestible report. You can see the sample values here are very common: referrals, display, like I said, search, and social. And these are all defined by where the source is coming from, where the medium is coming from, and summarizing all this information. Now, this is really important because commonly our clients, like you, are going to organize your company and spend money based on these channels. So this is common to be a primary lens for our marketers. We've also made recent enhancements to the default. Default channel grouping will cover many needs for most clients. We do know that some clients have custom needs, and I'll get to that in a second. To enhance the default, we basically incorporated new information, more precise information that comes from Google sources. So specifically, we enhanced the channels for display, video, paid search, and even email to be more clear and to be more consistent across all of the different traffic sources that you might send in. And what this was meant to do is eliminate the more common needs for customizations. But like I said, customizations are always needed to some degree at the highest level of maturity for our clients, and custom channels are coming. I'm not making announcements for a date right now, but know that we're working on that right now. Stay tuned to the release notes. And you can basically get started today by going and viewing the traffic source report. The next topic I wanted to go on to, and actually is really fundamentally important to channels and to our marketing initiatives because it dictates kind of how we define a user and how we process the data. The first one I'll go over is Google Signals. So very common question: what is Google Signals, or more appropriately, what are Google Signals? Google Signals is the set of identifiers that Google owns and uses for user deduplication and targeting purposes. So this is the connective tissue that we would use to communicate with ads, DV360, SA360, etc. When enabled, and when your end user is also consented for collecting this data, Google will collect any available Google signal available on the device. So if it's slightly different for web and app, but we basically pull in the identifiers that Google owns and that Google would use to build an audience and share that audience with our ads platforms. How do we use Google Signals? As I mentioned before, we use it for two use cases. One is to deduplicate users, and the other is advertising. So Google Signals is used whenever we don't have a user ID, and we'll get to user ID in a second. It is better than any other, or it's better than not having a logged in identifier, but we see the user ID as the primary identifier. So if there's no user ID, we will then fall back on Google Signals identifiers. We keep all of this data separate in its own kind of processing stack and column for privacy and security reasons. And when we deliver this data in reports, we actually add it back together in a logically mutually exclusive way so that we're not overcounting users, and you basically get the data for the best identifier that was able to be collected for any event you collect. And then just adding that because this data is sensitive and can be used to identify a user, all data from Google Signals is thresholded for privacy reasons. We also use this data for advertising. So like I said before, this is the connective tissue between Google Analytics and any advertising solution. So when a conversion or an audience is shared, we're not sharing your user IDs or even your pseudonymous client or app instance IDs. We're sharing the Google Signals identifier that would then be used by the ads platform for that targeting purpose. And naturally, just to be the same as measurement, audiences are also thresholded for privacy reasons. There's a number of controls also to keep in mind with Google Signals that's more than some of the other identifiers that are automatically collected. I have the ability to control where Google Signals are collected and where they're used for advertising. So in the top box here, number 1, you can see the area in admin that would control how advertising signals are used. There's an equivalent experience that enables you to choose where they are collected. These controls are in place to now allow you to use Google Signals in one region while not using it in another. The second control is that when you make a link to ads or SA or DV, you're able to select whether or not you're sharing data with them for advertising purposes, basically sharing conversions and audiences. This is another control that sits on top of the control I just talked about that basically controls for an individual link how you're sharing data. They work together. So if both effectively have to be on for data to be shared, and if one is off, data is not shared. And then lastly, and this is new to Google Analytics 4, we've enabled you to select whether or not you're using this data or not for user identification and deduplication purposes. So you can see down here, number 3, you can choose between the blended set of data, which is going to, again, use the best identifier whenever we have it to deliver the most accurate reports for you, or you can choose to use only observed data, and that would use the pseudonymous IDs only to produce reports. Slightly less accurate, but also something that some people choose for privacy and security reasons. So you can get started today with Google Signals by going into the admin section, consenting to collection, and then enabling collection. All right, from there, I want to talk about another really important identifier. Similarly to Google Signals, this is a core identifier. I've already told you we position it as the primary, and it is, and we use this for all processing of data whenever we collect it. So what is a GA4 user ID? It's actually a solution for you to give us your logged in identifier. We would prefer a hashed version of that logged in identifier. Do not send PII into user ID, please. But when you send it to us, we will use that as the primary identifier. Similar to Google Signals, we will collect and process that data in its own stack and bring it back together at times of reporting or audience sharing to share the most accurate version of the audience possible. And unlike Universal Analytics, this is not a set of reports. So every event that collects user ID, we use user ID to process that user. It goes throughout our entire system, isn't embedded in every feature, and is just a core function of how we're moving forward in this new first-party centric environment. How do we use user IDs? Well, similarly to Google Signals, we use them in 2 ways. We use them for measurement and for advertising. Like I said before for Google Signals, user ID is the primary identifier. So whenever we have a user ID, we use that first. We would then fall back on Google Signals, like I said before, or the pseudonymous ID if we can collect no other better identifier. I already said this, but I'll repeat. It's kept separate on its own stack of processing from both Google Signals and the pseudonymous identifiers. There are no specific thresholds added to user ID because it is your data. However, for the purposes of audiences and because it's intermingled with Google Signals, we do threshold audiences. And to get into the advertising space, we do use user IDs to identify and deduplicate users for audiences. But like I said, and just to remind you, we would then find the last Google signal associated with that user ID as the actual connective tissue to send to ads to target. So at no point are we sharing your user IDs directly with an advertising product. So, how do we get started? Unlike Universal Analytics, there's no special enablement for user ID. I do not have to go into the admin section, and I don't have to click any button to turn it on. All I have to do is start collecting this data. That alone is a signal to Google Analytics that you wanted to collect this data and you want to use it for user deduplication and advertising purposes. So all you need to do is go ahead and start collecting this data. And with that, I will pass it off to Anjali to talk about attribution.
Thank you, Matt and Brain, for walking us through traffic source classifications and channel groupings. So let's jump into attribution. Attribution is the act of assigning credit for conversions to different ads, clicks, and other factors along a user's path to completing a conversion, like a purchase. An attribution model can be a rule, a set of rules, or a data-driven algorithm. Here you can see the attribution models that are available in Google Analytics 4. Our recommended model is the Data Driven Attribution model. This model uses advanced machine learning to more accurately understand all of the relevant touch points and marketing moments that may have led to a user ultimately converting. So let's talk about the data-driven attribution methodology. There are two key components to the methodology. The first part is analyzing the available path data to develop conversion rate models for each of your conversions. Data-driven attribution considers both converting and non-converting paths to understand how the presence and timing of a particular marketing touchpoint may impact your user's probability of conversion. The resulting models assess how likely a user is to convert at any particular point in the path given exposure to a particular click event. From there, the second part is using that conversion rate model prediction as an input to an algorithm that attributes conversion credit to click events. So the data-driven attribution model assigns credit based on how the addition of each click event to the path changes the estimated conversion probability. And it uses features including time between the click event and the conversion, the format type, and other query signals to calculate this credit. So in this example, you can see that the top path had 4 touch points, whereas the bottom path had 3. And so you can see the incremental impact from that additional touch point. Now that we've talked through our attribution models and data-driven attribution specifically, let's talk through the differences between attribution in Google Analytics 4 and attribution or the multi-channel funnels report in Universal Analytics. In Google Analytics 4, we launched 2 enhanced reports that covers all of those use cases that you were able to leverage in Universal Analytics, but in a more streamlined way. DDA, Data-Driven Attribution, is available in your reports for all customers, not 360 only, and we've introduced property-level attribution settings, which we'll dive into later. From a modeling perspective, we included cross-device conversion and incrementality calibration to enhance the overall attribution offering. And you can export fractional data-driven attribution credit to ads in the future. Our integrations are across ads, YouTube Engage Views, DV360, and SA360. And last but not least, our attribution offering is cross-platform, meaning it's across app and web, in addition to being cross-channel. The attribution reports are housed in the Advertiser Workspace. This is a single destination in the interface that's easy to navigate to and designed to quickly address everyday advertiser needs. So the reports in this workspace will give you an understanding of the ROI of media spend across all of your channels. Within the Advertiser Workspace, you'll see the Advertiser Snapshot, which will house insights from your attribution reports, and you'll also see the conversion paths report and the model comparison report. First, let's take a look at the conversion paths report. This report allows you to view the customer path to conversion and assign credit to the touchpoints in that journey based on the selected attribution model. The conversion paths report in GA4 brings together the best of universal analytics attribution reports and will include a new customer journey visualization showing conversion credit across early, mid, and late touchpoints. It will also serve as a central place to analyze top paths, time to lag conversion, and path link to conversion. As I mentioned before, you can select the attribution model at the top of this report to understand how different models may impact your data. Next, the model comparison report. This report allows you to compare how different attribution models can attribute credit across your channel, source, medium, or campaigns, and ultimately help you determine what the best model is for your business. Previously, I mentioned property level attribution in Google Analytics 4. So let's dive into a little bit on what that means. You can now select an attribution model and a look back window in Admin under an attribution settings page. The attribution model that you select at the property level applies to reports with event scoped data. What that means specifically in the UI is your conversions drill down report and your explorations, and we'll dive into a little bit more on that later. It's important to note that the attribution settings at the property level don't impact the attribution model selected in your attribution reports. So you can continue to flexibly use the attribution picker when you are in the conversion paths or model comparison report. It also does not impact user or session data. So both user and session data will continue to use non-direct cross-channel last click. The look back window that you can select in your attribution settings page will apply to all of your data. Let's look at an example of how you could use attribution in Explore. Here you'll see that in your dimensions selector, there is a list of attribution dimensions. If you select any of these, you can see attributed conversions, revenue, and event value metrics. The property level model gets us one step closer to embedding attribution as a native capability throughout your analytics. And so with that, we covered a few different topics today. Thank you for joining us. We walked through traffic source, cross-channel, and integration-specific dimensions, channel groups, Google Signals, user ID, data-driven attribution, and the Advertiser Workspace. Thanks for tuning in today. We hope you learned something new. As we mentioned, this session is part of a larger training series, so stay tuned for more sessions. If you have any questions, check out the Google Analytics Help Center for information and support options. And if you're a Google Analytics 360 customers, feel free to reach out to your point of contact anytime to discuss GA4 properties or the content we discussed today. Thank you.